You're watching Business Trends Today exclusively on ASBN.
Today we're talking about how mindset drives innovation and what business owners can learn from the way Elon Musk thinks. That's kind of cool. Our guest knows something about that. Charles Steele is the author of The Curious Mind of Elon Musk, 9 Ways He Thinks Differently. He's an investor, a writer who spent 2 decades working alongside leadership teams at firms like Goldman Sachs and the Carlyle Group, helping build and scale major companies. He has also worked as an advisor for former UK Prime Minister Mr. Tony Blair and served as chair of Save the Children in the United Kingdom. Charles, great to have you on the show today.
Jim, it's great to be with you.
Well, so let me ask you this. What inspired you to write The Curious Mind of Elon Musk? There's probably no one out there that, especially in business, that doesn't want to get a little glimpse of what Elon Musk is thinking.
Well, Jim, I think that's the reason. Everyone is interested in Elon Musk.
Sure.
For myself, as you said, I've worked in business for about 30 years now, and I must say I've never come across anyone like him.
Yeah.
And I might ask you the same question, but he's really the most remarkable person. I sometimes think people outside of business think he's sort of like an uber businessman, like a caricature version of a businessman.
Right.
But I've never seen anything like that.
No.
And as you mentioned, I've also worked in outside of business in areas where people like to talk about mission and humanity.
Sure.
And you hear Musk do that a lot. But of course, he's unlike anyone I've seen in that domain as well.
Yeah.
So I was trying to understand the mind myself and piece those two things together.
Yeah. And just when you think you've got him a little bit figured out, like, oh, he's this type of an individual, man, he zigs when everybody zags. And you're like, wait a minute, maybe he's not that kind of an individual. He's, doing so many different things at once, but just an incredible, would you call him a genius? I mean, would he be a modern day genius?
I would say he's a genius.
Yeah.
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
I think so much is spoken about him, and one of the things that gets very little airtime is how good he is as an engineer.
Yeah.
Jim, how often do you talk about, is he brilliant at engineering the vehicles, the rockets, the AI?
Yeah.
No one really talks about that.
No,
they want to
of course
talk about
not.
the politics. They want to talk about the money.
Sure.
But I think when you look at the engineering, and that's an important insight, because when you look at his companies, he doesn't think of them as businesses. He thinks of them as groups of people that come together to engineer products. And so, yeah, I would have to admit, he's certainly a genius.
Yes, that's for sure. So, quite an entrepreneur. I mean, he looks at things where there's a need for something, and he creates these different products and what have you. Let's start there from your interpretation. What is an entrepreneur?
So for me, an entrepreneur is someone who backs themselves in a given risk-reward situation. So we've all invested in businesses, been in businesses, started businesses. We've been in a situation where we think, shall I do this?
Yeah.
What's the upside? What's the downside? And what distinguishes an entrepreneur is they back themselves to take the next step. Not everyone does that.
No question. So many entrepreneurs are listening to us have this discussion today and have been told by their circles and friends and family that, are you sure you want to do this? Maybe now's not the right time. Maybe you should stick with your full-time job. Maybe you should do something else. Maybe. There's so many people out there that want to knock a entrepreneur's game off, right? And say, go back to what we think you should do, right?
Yeah. So what interests me is why some people don't take the step. And I got really into this in researching and writing the book. And I think when you're young, of course, it's difficult. And that's why I always say to people in their 20s, you may not know how often, Jim, do you hear people say, I don't know what I want to do. I'm an entrepreneur,
all the time.
but I haven't found
Right.
it. They all say that.
Yep.
So spend your 20s, go off, work hard, learn a craft, surround yourself by really smart people. At some point, you will probably find a problem that's worth solving. What's harder is the people that doubt they have the ability to do this. And I think there's so much wasted talent, people that could be great entrepreneurs, and they don't take that step. And this is something that I also discovered from researching about Elon Musk, is some psychological techniques that he uses to help make him make the next step. as you said, he's a genius, and we can't all say, "I want to be a genius too. I can be like Elon Musk." It doesn't work that way. He's brilliant at technology. We can't all say, "I want to be brilliant at writing code or building rockets." But we can all overcome the self-doubt to take the next step. And I have, on a personal level, found what he says on that topic really interesting.
Yeah. What does he say?
So, his what he describes as his energizing force is curiosity. So, what is curiosity? I think curiosity is when you are facing the unknown and the uncertain, you get out of your head. How easy is it to be in your head and you're waiting for someone to give you the answer? That's what someone who's not curious does.
Yeah.
Someone who's not curious also might be paralyzed because they don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
The curious person steps out of their head and says the answer is out there. I got to go and find the questions that are the right questions for that answer. And this is what Musk does better than anyone. And he has a very, very clever way of framing this, which I love, which is to think of the future as a stream of probabilities. Now, often when we think about, shall I start this business, shall I launch this new product, we often sort of frame it in a binary way. Yes, it will work. No, it will fail. When you think of a sort of estuary of different outcomes, then you begin to see that, no, it's everything in between. So when you do that, you also realize a bunch of other things. I've got to get it out there, frame the questions that will help me get nearer to the answer. You'll never get to the answer, but if you make products and people want them and people buy them, that's feedback. They're giving you the answer. What you also learn is what you do as an entrepreneur or as a creator or as a dynamic person affects the probabilities of those outcomes. So you have tremendous agency. And I think realizing that is a very empowering thing.
Yeah.
Still, sometimes people are faced with the fear that it's all going to fail. They go back to that binary framing.
That's right.
And here Musk has a very sort of clever fatalistic reframing where he says, confront the fear. Let's go there. Let's look at what it looks like. It's pretty awful. But you know what? You'll survive. You'll get through it.
Right.
So just take the first step. But there's something that he also builds on that with, which is, if you fail, you sure will waste a lot of time and effort and money. So do your darndest to make sure that doesn't happen. So I love that. The final related thing is, moving these probabilities is pretty hard to do. There are a lot of people out there who are trying to do the same. Maybe they're competing against you. You're not going to do that if you are just copying what you did in the past or copying what someone else has done. You probably have to really get creative. You probably have to do something that hasn't been done before. Maybe it's been done in a different industry, but not in your industry. Maybe it's been done in a different geography and not in your geography. So it's not that it's never been done in any field anywhere in the world, but in your business, you're doing it for the first time. That way, you start asking the questions, you start changing the probabilities, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, for sure. You describe Musk as driven by a kind of religion of curiosity. What can obsessively curious people learn from how he channels that? You kind of touched on it already, but dive a little deeper on that.
Yeah. So look, Jim, those are his words. He calls it not only a philosophy, but as you said, a religion. It is a kind of faith for him. Now, you mentioned at the outset that he's sort of a bit like of a genius. He doesn't think like he doesn't think like me. I don't think he thinks like the regular person. I believe, having studied him for years, he is the kind of person who at some point in the day his mind will wander and he will start to think, what is the nature of reality? Well, most people don't do that. So when he talks about curiosity, that's what he means. When I talk about curiosity, I mean overcoming the uncertain, overcoming the unknown, taking the next step. And I think there's a practical version of of doing what of his elaborate philosophy, which goes deep into physics and epistemology and so on. There's an everyday way to apply that, which is what I described earlier.
Yeah, for sure. For tech founders that are out there, and we've got a great number of them that are subscribers to our show and viewers of our show. For tech founders specifically, what does he do differently when building these companies?
So this comes back to, in my view, we start off with the entrepreneur. The tech entrepreneur is someone who, let's be honest, probably needs to take an even greater degree of risk. Technology, Musk says, is something that has more of a leverage impact on the world than anything else. In your lifetime, there might be know-how, science there that you can put to work. So you can make a real dent in the world in terms of doing something useful and creating value. That means you have to be ambitious. That means the upside rewards are potentially really big. It means the risk is huge too. So what we see with people like Musk is I think of it this way, Jim. They're sitting on a ledge, which is the frontier of what we know, and they're trying to move things forward, and they're competing with other people in the same position, and so they need to innovate like crazy. Musk doesn't just talk about innovation, he talks about the rate of innovation. He takes it to such a degree that he says you have to penalize the absence of innovation. I've never heard anyone say that. So if people are not innovating, they don't have a place in your company.
Wow.
So what we see with people like Musk, and he really is a brilliant example of it, is they will set up their organization such that it is optimized for the engineering of the product and fulfilling a mission. Because the mission is what gets a lot of these guys motivated to work 7 days a week, 100-hour weeks, to compete like crazy against the next guy, because they connect the hardness of what they're doing with the mission of doing something very important.
Yeah.
As a result, they run very flat organizations. Anything which is not about engineering the product is superfluous. Therefore, they are, and Musk says this openly, they're pretty hardcore cultures.
Yeah.
And so I would ask people to think about, do you really want to do that? Do you want to, Adam Grant, I'm sure you know, wrote this wonderful book called Give and Take, and he talks about collegiate, inclusive leadership styles. I think that's terrific. I'm not sure that works in the kind of environment that Musk is working in,
I don't think so.
a lot of these tech founders.
Right.
So you have to decide what is right for you.
That's right. Switching gears a little bit here, when readers finish your book, how should it change the way they approach the next big decision?
They should think of the world in terms of risk. Now, I think risk, it always has this negative connotation, negative risk. But in the investment business, when we buy a company, we think of risk in terms of upside risk and downside risk. And then we think of the relationship between risk and reward. You can get huge rewards by taking huge risks, but maybe you don't want the downside risk. Maybe if you want to cap your downside risk, you want to accept a more range-bound return or upside risk that you get. So I would really encourage people to think the future is not fixed. It's a set of probabilities. The things that you do change those probabilities, and think in terms of risk-reward.
I love it. I love it. Charles, great insight. The book is The Curious Mind of Elon Musk, 9 Ways He Thinks Differently. We're going to make a link right below the video that you're watching right here at ESPN.com so you can get your own copy of the book, which I highly recommend you do. It's a phenomenal book. Charles Steele, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Very much appreciate it. Love to have you back on the show because there's about 5 other questions I didn't get to. So thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. It's been great.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Business Trends Today exclusively on ASBN.